Welcome, everybody. I am so grateful that you're here for Business Inspiration. And I am so excited that today I have a special guest. His name is Dean Minuto. He is my good friend and buddy. We've known each other for quite some time now, and he is a mover and shaker. And we are
Uh-oh.
super
Moving and shaking.
excited to have
Moving and
him today.
shaker.
Dean, how are you?
I'm awesome. I should tell him that I knew you liked me in the very beginning because you picked on me. I actually think you heckled me when we first met from the audience, which is how I've always known that a girl likes me. So and then we started taking our walks together in the morning.
That's right. We would get together at a fabulous event that was held in La Jolla, California, and you and I would take our walks. Absolutely.
Oh, let's not make people too jealous. We were at a Marriott with no view, and we were walking behind townhouses and seafood
Dumpsters.
restaurants. But yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, but
right.
that's
Yeah.
okay. I was with you. I was with a person. I was with Coach Dana, whose goal is to make a difference and help people, and that's who I want to surround myself with. So,
Absolutely.
where are we going with this? Where are we
Hey,
going with
well,
this here
I, well,
today?
I want to know how has your business been going? You been okay? You doing
Yeah,
okay? How's
I'm,
the family?
everyone's great. Everyone's great. Family's great. We had a really tough year. I think everyone did. I spent most of the year sitting on this bench here out back with my view of the ocean. And I had my artist about a year ago think about this concept of, I had this concept that we're never starting over. We're always starting different. And so I had Lucia create a little start button, which is a sunrise. And I think for most of us, this summer was about starting different. It's I think the idea of starting over freaks people out. This word pivot, you got to pivot, you got to do this. I think it freaks people out. And it certainly freaked me out when COVID hit, and I realized that everyone wasn't going to do what was necessary to prevent this, and I realized we were going to be another year or two into it. And Dana, my life is really about two things, right? My life is really about my daughter, Devin, and my life is about contributing and making a difference for clients and the folks I speak to. And, a couple of years ago, as you know, I was a single dad for 16 years. Devin had gone away to college. And I felt, that sort of a part of me was missing, and I had to start different. I'll just show folks this is actually a map that's hanging in my kitchen. I started with the question, what's the highest and best use of my time? And how do I want to spend the rest of my life, if you will? And let me just say that I asked, what's the perfect quarter look like, the perfect business quarter? And how can I back into it? Well, that led me to, make this move down to St. Pete Beach, Florida. And I wasn't counting on being stranded down here, stranded on this bench. But as it happens, I did a lot of thinking. Part of the early part of this whole COVID thing was I thought I had friends and I could do a series of interviews. I did 10 of them over the course of 10 weeks with people I thought could contribute to people, especially in this time. And I think I sparked some thinking, and
Yeah.
tell me what the result was for you.
Well, you inspired me. I saw that and I went, that is exciting. Now, will I ever be as fabulous as the Dean Minuto?
No, I
I can
think I
only
think I
I
think you
can
I can
only
think you can be more
strive.
fabulous. I
I
think
can
you can be
only
more
strive.
fabulous.
But you have to start to get any place. And so I had to have one interview to get to 10, to get to 20. And so I've done 27 interviews every single week. And I'm excited. I've had such a plethora, a cornucopia of interesting people with great ideas and things that can help people. And they're all on YouTube, so people can always go back and look at them up and stuff. But I really wanted to reach out and say, hey, y'all,
Yeah,
what
well, you
what can we do
certainly
to
did
help?
that. Well, and I was one of the first people that you reached out to, and I was hurting. I was hurting at the time.
Yeah.
Here, I'll show you a picture of kind of how I kind of felt at the time. So I kind of felt like this lion who forgot who he was, and
Mm,
I don't know how many of us over the course of the summer felt this way. For me, I totally felt just crushed being away from my kid, feeling like, am I really who I have said that I was? I teach this course in brain shortcuts, and I had this map laid out, but I was sitting on this dock, and really I asked myself a couple of questions, right? First thing I said was, what do I wish, and Dana, I'll have you think about this, and the people who are watching think about this question. If I was out here sitting next to my 21-year-old self, what are the things that I wish someone had shared with me when I was 21? Just take a moment and think about that question. What would you say if you were sitting next to your 21-year-old self? And it's funny, Dana, I came up with two things. The first thing is I wish someone had handed me two pieces of paper when I was 21. I wish someone had handed me a permission slip and told me, you have permission to make mistakes. You have permission to feel hurt. You have permission to feel down. And Dana, you and I have shared a little bit about, the parents we grew up with and the environments. I never grew up in an environment where it was okay to make a mistake. And guess what it is? And this summer, we and our clients and our families, because of going into fight or flight, feeling that we're, getting attacked in chaos and disruption, people are far more likely to make mistakes, and we have to give ourselves a pass for that. The second thing, Dana, I wish someone had said to me, and it goes to what you said when we first started, when I said, what was it about these interviews I did? And you said something about comparing yourself to me. You know what? I wish someone had given me a non-compete agreement when I was 21 and made me sign it. And that non-compete agreement, I wish it said, you agree that you're not going to compete with anyone except yourself. So these are, two conclusions I came to, and it took me a while to get through that because, Dana, you called me right at the time. Well, let me put it the way Mike Tyson put it. I mean, I'm not a huge sports fan. I did meet Mike Tyson, and that's a cool story, I'll tell you, if you're interested. But someone said to Tyson once before a championship fight, your opponent has a plan to beat you. And there was two parts of Mike Tyson's response. Everyone remembers the first part. He said, yeah, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Everyone remembers that part of the quote. What people don't remember is the second part of the quote. He said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And that's when they forget the basics. And that's why I'm always going to beat them, because I never forget the basics. Now, this summer, Dana, I don't know what it was like for you, but for me and many of our friends and family, this was a punch in the mouth. And when people get punched in the mouth, they forget the basics. So, I'm not embarrassed to admit, in mid-July, I realized I hadn't seen my daughter since March. In her entire 21-year life, I'd never gone more than 2 weeks without seeing her. And I realized it was going to be another 3 or 4 months before I was able to see her. And that shook me. That really shook me. And that's when you called and said, Dean, do you want to be my first interview? And I had to say to you, I'm not feeling that I can contribute. I'm so doubting myself. And it's funny, Dana, a few weeks later, and I've told you this story because then I called you and told you the story. I was with Devin and we were moving her into to an apartment for her senior year of college, and she needed a new mattress. So we went to the Raymore and Flanagan mattress store in Exton, Pennsylvania, and the sales guy comes up and his name is Faisal. And I introduced, I said, hey, Faisal. And we're talking and I'm just being Dean. And by the way, the evening before I had said to Devin, I said, Bertie, I'm really not feeling myself. And she said, Daddy, what's going on? I said, I put myself out there as being a professional speaker and being a motivational speaker. I'm none of those things. She says, Daddy, there's something called imposter syndrome, and we're all feeling it now. It's not just you, Daddy. She says, Daddy, how many copies of your book have you sold? I said, 50,000, but that's just to friends. She says, oh, 50,000 friends. Right, Dad. She said, Daddy, a few years ago, you were Vistage Speaker of the Year, 23,000 CEOs. I said, yeah, but that's just Vistage. She says, stop it. Stop it. You are who you are. So now the next day we're at Raymore and Flanagan and we're with Faisal. And I'm just being Dean. Dana, I'm just doing my Dean thing. And I said, Faisal, like the king, King Faisal. And he said, you've heard of King? I said, your mother named you after the king. I said, you're from Pakistan, but your mother named you after King Faisal. He says, yes. He says, how could you know this? He says, now I'm the king of mattresses. And so we're laughing. And he says, I have to get my manager, Anthony, to meet you. And Anthony comes over. And again, I'm just being Dean, doing my Dean thing. And at the end, it was a 2-story furniture store, Dana, with it. And we're going down the escalator to the cash register. And I'm down on the bottom. Faisal's just above me. Tony's above him, and Devin's up here. And Faisal taps me on the shoulder. And I lean over. He says, Dean, may I ask you a personal question? I said, of course. He said, are you a motivational speaker? I said, yes, Faisal. Yes, I am. He said, I knew it. Tony, I told you. It's the only. And Devin's going, what's going on? You know, we get out to the car and I tell her, she says, and Dad, you were doubting yourself. She says, even a furniture salesman at Raymore and Flanagan knows who you are. So, you know, I would just say, you know, to anyone on this call, you know, let's remind ourselves of these 2 facts, right? First, it's okay to screw up. And second, let's not compare ourselves with anyone else. As long as we're learning, as long as we find an important lesson and invite needed growth, right? That's the acronym for failing. Find an important lesson, invite needed growth. You know, we're moving forward. And so let me tell you the second story. So I reached out to you and we had this phone call, but I had a second epiphany that I don't know whether I've shared with you. So I did a series of recorded keynotes for some of my clients, multiple cameras, microphones, awesome, right? And I sent out a link to this most recent keynote I had done around the shortcuts the brain uses, the brain's GPS to help us find direction. And I could share this with the people on the call if they'd like, or send you the link, but it's a real simple tool I came up with to help us use the brain's own shortcuts to get us back on track and have a sense of direction if we feel lost in life or anything. And I sent the link to one of my friends who's a Vistage chair, a chair of a group of CEOs in the Silicon Valley. And Dana, he sent a note back and he called me, he says, Dino, I don't know if you know anyone who could talk about making great virtual sales presentations. And I said, well, you know, Scott, if I were to talk about that, and him and I started brainstorming, there was a list of 58 learning objectives. And I had this epiphany, Dana. We've been selling virtually since 1888 when Mr. Sears sent out the first catalog.
I have said that. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
I've been training people to sell virtually since 1999, and I've trained 60,000 of them. We just called it telemarketing. So that led me to be thinking about some of the stuff that I'm showing you here on the screen. And, you know, listen, I can talk about virtual, and, you know, if you want to have a background, if you want people to see you in your business office and put a presentation, you know, how do you actually physically do this? That's a component of its own. You know, then how do you engage with an audience? So, you know, again, I think it's important that we remind ourselves of the basics. You know, even though COVID has been a punch in the face, you know, here's something else I'll share. Any of you right now can go on the internet and type in essential SIC code classifications. Type in New York State essential industries. And here's why I'm going to suggest you do this. I know COVID's been a punch in the face, guys, but there are a lot of industries that are doing 2 times, 4 times the revenue they were this time last year because they're in what's considered an essential industry. And by the way, those aren't secrets. You know, we had to identify who those businesses were. So those SIC codes are out there. So it doesn't matter what you sell. Here's the first thing I'll tell you. People have problems. If you can solve them, there's a fortune there. And that applies in any environment, whether it's COVID, whether or not. And we know what the basics are if we just take a deep breath and remind ourselves. So Dana, that's part, you know, you ask a professional speaker a question and I'm off and running. So.
But that's why I asked you to be here, because I know we are going to get great information from you. You are always bubbling full of fabulous information.
I'm full of it. I am definitely full of it. I have heard that before. I have heard that before.
You're so
Dana,
naughty.
if I were to give your listeners or watching a real quick summary of everything I've learned from brain science, what do you think? Should we do
Oh, that
that?
was, yeah, I think that, because that was on
Should
my
we do
list to
that?
talk to you about. So
That
let's
was on
get
your
to it.
list?
It
All right,
was
well,
right
let
here.
me just see what I
I got
got
my
here. I
list right
flipped
here.
through this, I flipped through this. Okay, let me just tell you folks that one of the most important things I tell you, so whoever you need to influence, and let me pretend it's this person that's sitting right here next to me. Let me pull him out so your audience can see him. I actually travel on the road with this guy. So if we open up this person's brain, we know more now about the human brain than we've ever known in the history of the world. Okay, if I were to take the brain out, I can tell you that this is the most energy consumptive organ in your body. It uses a quarter of your body's energy. It's only 3% of your body's mass. And it only has two goals. Okay, only has two goals. First goal in any situation is to keep you alive. The second goal in any situation is to use as little energy as possible in keeping you alive. Now, I'm going to come back to those two goals in a minute. But remember this, of the 5 channels by which your brain accepts information, there's only 5. Your senses, the eyes, the ears, the nose, the mouth, and the skin. Of the 5 senses, 1 gets information to the brain 30 times faster than the other 5. And that's the eyes. Guys, now I can give you a bunch of shortcuts and a bunch of tips, but remember this. Number 1, everyone focuses on themselves. They're listening to this radio station, WIIFM. What's in it for me? The second thing is everyone focuses on any change in their environment because a change might be a threat. So visually, they're looking at changes, right? Right now, if I click this up on the board, you can see that the environment has changed. There's a hurricane out there, right? And a hurricane might be a threat. The third most important thing I can tell you is to always remember this. In any situation, if you can show it, never say it if you can show it. If I want to spark emotions from my friend Dana, one of the fastest way for me to do that is to create a way in this presentation for me to reference something about her, something she cherishes, something she loves. So, I don't have to go back too far, to remember how much you loved Lufty and how much you love John. And by showing you that visual, I'm making a connection, right?
Absolutely.
Now there's actually, folks, if you look up the term cognitive bias, if you want to write that term down, I want you to look that up on the internet, because if you do, on Wikipedia, if you look up the term cognitive bias, what you guys will find is there's 188 documented shortcuts that the brain uses to make decisions. And if you understand even a handful of the main shortcuts, you will help people say yes to you faster. Here, let me put this term up on the board. So the term is cognitive bias. That means shortcuts. And if you go to Wikipedia and look that term up, here's what you're going to see. This is the Codex of Cognitive Biases. There's 188 of them. In the courses that I teach, I summarize these as only 7. There's 7 primary shortcuts. I call them brain whispers, and you see them here in an acronym that I refer to as the magnets. Motion, ask, give, nice, evidence, trust, and supply. Any one of these shortcuts, if you understand and you apply them, you can actually make it easier for people to say yes to you. So, by the way, of the top 5 shortcuts, the biggest I'll give you is never say it if you can show it. So that was the example, the picture of you, John, and Lufty, right? How can we make our message visual for people? The second biggest shortcut that I'll tell you about in any situation where you're looking to influence or persuade, I want you to ask yourself this question. What's at risk for that person? And how can I lower their risk? The avoidance of risk is 5 times more powerful than the desire to seek reward. So while we're always talking to people about how they can gain from us, the more important question is, how can you help them avoid a loss or avoid a risk? Go ahead, Dana, that sparked a thought for you there. Go ahead.
That is so true, though, because when you said that, we always talk about, what are you going to get out of this? But what we need to be talking about is what can you, what can you get out of because of this? How can
Oh,
you?
that's interesting. It's not what you can get out of it. It's what can you get out of because of this. Really interesting. That's an interesting way of saying it, Dana. I put together a tool, and I'll show it to you guys here. So I put together a tool I call the magic mirror. So if you guys were to take out a blank sheet of paper, you could draw this anytime you want. It's really the two key questions that I told you the brain thinks about. The first key question is, how do I stay alive? That's what we'll call gain. So the first part of this scale is high gain or low gain, right?
Okay.
Remember, the second question I asked you is, how do I use as little energy as possible to stay alive? So that's the pain, right? Hold on, let me go over here and say, let me pull up we're on Zoom, so I can pull up a whiteboard. Let me just do that. Can you see a whiteboard, Dana?
I can.
All right, so let me just grab a pen here as if I was in front of you guys talking at a whiteboard. This is gain, high gain or low gain. This is pain, high pain or low pain. I want you guys to notice this is what I call the brain's GPS. This bar is gain, this bar is pain, and now we can create a scale. It's either high gain or it's low gain, and it's high pain or low pain. You know what, folks? If you were to draw a triangle right here, I want you to understand the triangle stands for difference, delta. I believe we are all here to make a difference for people. So I want you to ask yourself in any situation, how can I be quadrant 1 for this person? How can I be high gain and low pain, easy to deal with? This is where your highest and best purpose is in life. God forbid you should become high pain and low gain to me. This is quadrant 4. This is the no Dino privileges quadrant. This is when people treat me with disrespect or treat my assistant Sarah with disrespect. Or guys, we don't have to deal with that. So, whether it's how we look at our customers and decide who we're going to spend time with and how much time we're going to spend with them, or our friends or our family, or whether it's the way our customers look at us. If I were to give you guys an exercise here, and I think we have, how many more minutes do we have? What's your timers, like 2 minutes, 2 more minutes? You know what? If I were to give you guys an exercise to leave this meeting with, and I would have you write down the name of a person that you're trying to influence or persuade. And then I want you to ask these questions. Do I know what their top 4 gains are in working with me? And the reverse of that would be, do I know what their top 4 risks are in working with me? And then I would ask you, do I know what their top 3 or 4 pains are? Quadrant 1 is the magic quadrant. This is where Amazon is. It's easy, okay? It's easy to work with Amazon. Amazon is going to win because it's one click, and human beings love things that are easy. It's painless, okay? So how do you increase people's gain, and how do you lower their pain? That puts you in quadrant 1. So everything that I focus on and talk about, first of all, I look around me all the time for the aha moments. That means, did I see something that works? Whether it's from another speaker, whether it's from, I have clients in I don't know, 30 different industries. So if Arch Insurance is my largest client right now with 3,000 employees around the world. If I see something that works with another insurance company, or even within a specific division of art, there's 3 questions that I ask folks. Number 1, what works? What are the best practices? Number 2, why do they work? And number 3, how can we calibrate these for ourselves? So,
all right. Wow.
That's where we are.
Wow. We could talk for another hour and a half, Dean. This is so great. What great information. And I have to say, I'm so happy that you are back in it and able to come in and share such great information and be so transparent about what you went through. I think so many of us went through and maybe some of us are still in that
Absolutely.
valley. that valley.
Absolutely.
We don't have to get stuck there. We don't have to get stuck
Absolutely.
there.
So here's the image that I end every talk with, and you've seen the image before. The statue was created by an artist who's a friend of mine. Her name is Bobby Carlisle, and the statue is called Self-Made Man. Bobby created an image of a person carving themselves out of a block of granite. And that's what we're doing. Dana, you're an instrument to help people carve themselves. You know, that's what your goal in life is. We're all starting different. I'll just remind everyone that, you know, a lot of this has to do with our perception of it, right? It was the best of times. It was the worst times. It was what we made of it. So Dana,
Absolutely.
I hope this contributes. I hope people have some interest in this and that they take some things away. And thank you for being my friend.
Well, and I thank you for being my friend and for being so willing to be here and to talk to us. And if anyone out there wants to get a hold of Dean, here is his information, his website. He is full of such great information and content. Reach out to Dean. And if you want to ask him about that, the GPS for the brain, Yescalate, how do you get to yes faster? He is just so happy to talk to you about that and how he can be a benefit to you. And thank you, Dean, so much. And
my
folks,
pleasure, Dana.
If I could be of service to any of you, my information is right down there with CoachDanaInspires.com. Reach out to me however I can be of service. I'd love to be that. And Dean, thank you. Get out there, do good work, share with others, and love you a lot. Just
love you too.
Take care.
Love you too.
All right, thank
Dana.
you. See everybody next Tuesday.